Pixel Therapy is a member of the But Why Though podcast network.
Go to butwhythoughpodcast.com for an inclusive geek community offering pop culture news, reviews, and podcasts.
It's okay to be enthusiastic. You don't have to be cynical. Love what you love unabashedly and be enthusiastic and be earnest. And I feel like these are a lot of things society tells us isn't cool. And I'm just like, no, it is the coolest thing in the world to be passionate about something and want to tell people about it.
Welcome to Pixel Therapy, the video game podcast where we look at the games we play through the lens of the player, where what you play is just as important as how you play it, and where emotional intelligence is a critical stat. Every other week, we bring on a guest who may or may not consider themselves a gamer to discuss the games that have made them and changed them and all the feelings they have about our favorite pastime. I'm your co-host, Jamie, pronouns she, her.
And I'm your co-host, Spencer, pronouns they, them.
And this is Pixel Therapy. Remember, if you're a fan of Pixel Therapy, there are several ways you can help support the show, and the first and most magnanimous of those ways is to come on over to patreon.com/pixeltherapypod and subscribe for as low as just $2 a month. That'll get you a monthly bonus episode, a cool little album art sticker, and our undying love and appreciation, which is the most important.
If my God. Sorry.
Yes, Spencer?
I'm sorry. I just was like, oh, while she's talking, I should look at the dashboard because I haven't looked at that for a while where we see our downloads, and we just passed 40,000 downloads, which I think is pretty exciting.
That's very exciting.
So wow. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Thank you for that very happy interruption.
I'm so bad I need to get better at interrupting you smoothly.
Yeah, I always just feel startled. Yeah. But that's very exciting. Thank you, everyone, for getting us to those 40K. Holy cow. Yeah, that's your work, not ours. Dang. Thank you. If I can hop back into my rigmarole real quick here, I will just say that if Patreon's not in the cards for you, that is okay. You can also just keep downloading our episodes, getting us to that 40K and beyond.
Milestones.
Or you can rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice, because that sort of thing does have a real impact. And if we like what you write, we may just read it on the show sometime. All right, folks, it's time to get cozy. Pull up your armchair. Feel free to lie down on your couch. Let's talk about our feelings. Spencer, how are you?
Jamie, it's the dog days of summer, and the allergies have been bleak. So if we're coughing and sneezing on this episode, we apologize. We both recently kind of moved to new locales, and I think the change in pollen is forking us up
a little bit. Yeah, I feel like I've got somebody dumped a Mack truck of phlegm into my sinus passages.
Yeah, it's not even just me. I had to take Naomi, my cat, to the vet the other day because her eyes and her ears are like so red, and like she could barely open her eyes. She's doing a lot better now, but we're all just kind of like hit with the allergies.
Oh my God.
My latest obsession is monitoring the level of humidity in my house. I feel like I'm having these like new homeowner obsessions like week to week. 1 week it's is the air coming in through the windows and disrupting our energy usage, things I've never thought about or cared about before.
Oh yeah.
And now
gotta seal up those cracks.
Humidity. You get sick more if it's more humid, and it can make your allergies worse, and it can make your house crumble apart and fall into moldy dust. At least in my stress nightmares. So
yeah, house literally crumbling around you.
Yeah, just listen. If anyone cares to know, an appropriate humidity level in your house is around 35%. So get out there, get those humidity monitors. There's your homeowner tip for the week.
Oh my God. Thank you for that. Thank you for Spencer's Homeowner Corner.
Yeah.
That's great. New segment.
Yeah. So with that, what about you, Jamie? How are you?
I'm sitting upright, which feels like a major success these days.
As a new parent.
As a new parent, yes. So my partner and I the only way to put it is that we lost our damn minds and decided to adopt another dog, a puppy of all things.
Yay!
Yes, his name is Booker, which is sort of named after Booker DeWitt from BioShock Infinite. Not because I love the character Booker DeWitt. Booker DeWitt's actually kind of a piece of shit, but the name is cool. It's a cool name.
You're welcome, Booker the dog.
You're welcome, Booker the dog. But yeah, my partner liked it as the name, and it does seem to suit him, and he does love to book it across the yard.
Aww.
So we say
he's so cute.
He's a very cute puppy, and it's probably the only reason that he is still in our home.
Yeah.
Because we just weren't expecting to get a dog so fast. We started the application process kind of thinking it would take us about a month, like it did with our first dog.
It's partially my fault for my glowing reference.
Yes.
This lady called me at 8 a.m.
Yeah, they were hot to trot. They were ready to get rid of this dog.
Are Jamie and Colt good dog owners? I was like,
Yeah, Spencer said very nice things, and we do love our dogs a lot. I just didn't think we were going to have another dog until probably early September, when my work would have been blessedly starting to calm down a tiny bit. But hey, it's both a blessing and a curse. Work is very stressful. It's really nice to look over and just see this cute little boy just laying here sleeping. And when he wakes up and he sees me, he wags his tail so hard and gets all excited. And that's all very adorable.
Paint us a visual picture of what he looks like.
He is a hound cur mix. So he's got like a dark brindle coloring over most of his body. He's got the big flappy hound dog ears.
Yeah.
This little narrow nose and very beady little dark eyes. But in conjunction with the brindle, his chest and legs are kind of like a whitish gray color with black speckles. So it's a really cool coloring mix. And his face is mostly black. So
I also just want to mention that Jamie brought Booker over to my house last weekend, and he barked at everyone except for me. We became instant besties, and he fell asleep in my arms.
He did. He's a pretty selective little boy, which is funny because our other dog Tess has never known a stranger in her life. She is a complete confident, strong-headed woman, and she goes out and greets everyone with the same enthusiasm and no fear of anything in the world. And Booker is far more hesitant, far more picky. I don't know if my partner finds it cute, but every day when my partner comes home from work, Booker forgets that he exists as a person and barks at him in terror until Colt leans down and Booker can smell him. And then he's like, "Oh, I remember you. You're the person that I know. You were just gone for 8 hours." And I forgot about you. Yeah. So it's cute. He's adorable, but he is a puppy. And he just, when he's not sleeping, he needs a lot of attention. And it's just a lot. We're just tired.
Totally.
But it's a good kind of tired.
New family life.
Yeah, new family life. But what's going on in video games? Let's talk about the important shit.
Yeah, the important shit.
What are you playing?
Oh my God. So basically 2 days ago, Boyfriend Dungeon came out. And for folks who are not familiar, Boyfriend Dungeon is a dungeon crawler dating sim. It's an indie game developed and published by Kitfox Games. It actually had a Kickstarter launch in August of 2018. You plunder these, what they're called, like they'll say let's hit the dunge. And it's set in this world where people go to these dungeons as a form of your exercise, and you you fight monsters that are sort of these personifications of your innermost fears. And the best part is that the weapons you take into the dungeon, you can date them. You woo your weapons in this really flirty, playful, and welcoming world. You explore these procedurally generated dungeons, and it has this real summer fling energy. It's set in Verona Beach, California. If that name sounds familiar, it's also the fictional California setting of Baz Luhrmann's 1996 Romeo and Juliet, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes? Yeah.
I did not even pick up on that. I love that so much, actually. I feel like that's helping me understand the game better. Please
like
continue.
The energy, like the camp of the game.
Yeah. Yes. There is it's not realistic in any version of, I mean, I don't know. There might be some real emotions, but mostly it's very, anyway, please continue.
Yeah. So Verona Beach has experienced this phenomenon where there are people who are able to turn into swords or weapons. There's axe people, there's sword people, there's this is the best part. I mean, maybe perhaps light spoiler, but not really, because they're in the images for the press images for the game. But one of the boyfriends is a cat.
Really?
Yeah. I was literally screaming. Like, you meet this cat out in the wild, and the weapon is essentially these brass knuckles that have claws on the end, and it turns into a cat. And then all of a sudden you start getting texts. So a big part of it is you're fighting in the dungeons, and then your downtime, you're going on dates, texting your new weapon friends, and sort of just exploring this world. And this number texts you and is like, "Hey, my cat came home with your number attached to his collar. Like, do you want to hang out with him again? I'll just let him out next time you want to hang out with him." And so you basically text this guy and are like, "Let your cat out," and then you and the cat go in the dungeons together.
Oh my God, that's absolutely amazing.
This is the fact that one of your romanceable options is a cat is just so queer and so me that I immediately appreciated it so much. I'm like still screaming about it.
I love that.
Yeah, have you started playing it yet? I remember when I texted you that it came out, you were like, "That's out today. Oh my God, drop everything." Did you play it yet?
I've played less than 2 hours, but I have played a little bit of it. It's on Game Pass, which is like the new way that I get all of my video games.
I need Xbox like yesterday.
Yeah, everybody does. I honestly, if you're into games and you want to get a lot of good indie games cheap, Xbox is where it's at right now. Every week it seems they've got some new cool indie game dropping on Game Pass. But anyway, yeah, it was on Game Pass. I was like, I'm definitely checking this out either way. But I'd had my eyes on Boyfriend Dungeon since I saw a trailer for it. Whoa, maybe a year ago. Got to be close to a year ago now. They had a trailer. It might have been at like a Nintendo Indie World Showcase or something like that. But yeah, I have played a couple hours of it. I am really enjoying it so far. But it definitely, that's what I was kind of trying to put my finger on before. It's got a tone to it that is very, camp, I think is probably the right word. It's just very silly.
Yeah, it's very
it's not like you're not building a consistent character in this world, or I don't know, there might be moments in the relationships that feel meaningful, but I think overall it's kind of like, oh, you're hot and funny, and you're a good weapon, so I'm going to keep talking and hanging out with you. But that's kind of all, I mean, again, only like an hour and a half in, so maybe it gets deeper as you go in.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, it's definitely a hedonistic game. Like, I think it really leans into this idea of like, hey, post-pandemic summer, we're going to date it up. We're going to hook it up. We're going to have fun. It really encourages you to lean into, like, if you like someone, go for it. There aren't a lot of, I really enjoy the way it sort of, I don't know, there's something very queer about it, other than people turning into weapons and the sort of innuendo there.
Yeah.
And the fact that, I think your character gives off a ton of top energy. Like, a lot of the conversations are through texting. And it's like, people will send you like walls of text, like, "Oh, I enjoyed hanging out with you so much. I can't wait to see you again. Like, will you meet me here?" And then your answers are like, "Yup," or like a thumbs up emoji.
Yeah, thumbs up emoji.
There's so much, I just thought there's so much like queer subtext. And this, just the kind of really poly-friendly, so just to back up a little bit, like, your character is someone who has historically struggled a lot with self-expression, or they don't really know themselves. They are shy and kind of withdrawn. They come to Verona Beach for the summer to live with their queer cousin, And the cousin is like, hey, while you're here, let me set up some dates for you. Let me introduce you to some folks. I have a lot of friends around the area. All of that is so queer. Just the idea that you go to a city for the summer and like sow your wild oats and figure out who you are. Like I don't know, I can relate to that a lot. And it's being on your own for maybe the first time and sort of exploring your sexuality or dating different people and figuring out like what you like. There's something like really pure and flirty and fun about it. It is very light. Like I feel like even though there is a storyline that kind of emerges as you're advancing your relationships, and there's this sort of gathering force that you have to defeat. There's no real risk. Like I never felt like I was worried that one of the characters was gonna die, or that if I made the wrong dialogue option that I'd never be able to reconcile. Like there was just this really lighthearted energy that made it really fun to play. I think something else about the game is that it's just so horny. Like,
yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me pick up my
like
Switch.
Really horny.
Like it is. Like I was kind of fanning myself a little bit at some junctures.
And things move quickly. Like I said, I've played
Yes.
2 hours of the game and I've already banged somebody and been like propositioned.
Yeah. Summer of love out here in Verona Beach.
Yeah. It moves quick.
I'm literally texting with a sword person and he's like, my sword is extra sharp today. And you're like, tell me more. And he says, it's like my edge is scraped against your whetstone until it's keen, aching, ready to part flesh. And then you can say, show me or TMI. So I said, show me, obviously. Yeah. And then he sends you a picture of himself as the sword on a blanket.
Wow. Jesus.
It's a picture of a sword on a blanket. People, you have to play this freaking game. I will say, one thing, as I said, I love the game for how queer coded it is. It's so, and it has that kind of, like if you've played Bastion or even Hades, like it has a pretty satisfying combat system where it also kind of reminds me of Persona 5, the way time progresses. It's like every time you go into a dungeon, if you go into the dungeon, time will move forward and it'll progress to the next day. But until then, like if you want to socialize, shop, explore the city, you can do that for as long as you want. So I immediately felt like pretty at home playing this game. Like it felt both familiar and fresh. I really liked, I don't know, I've been getting more and more into visual novels. Like I lately played Doki Doki Literature Club. I played Dark Gray a couple months ago. I've been playing some other like visual novel-y games here and there. But I just felt like this was the most, I didn't feel like I had to look for the queer representation or the kind of poly, or I don't know what even the word is, just the kind of, like it felt authentic in a way that I wasn't used to. With that in mind, I did have some light, some light critiques.
Oh boy, let's hear it.
Well, it's just, I think, well, first of all, there's only one romanceable girlfriend.
Oh, really? In the entire game?
Yeah.
Did you beat it?
I did.
Okay.
This morning. Yeah, I was feverishly playing into the night and then woke up this morning at like 7 and I was like, I have to figure out what happens with Isaac. My sexy fencing
so Isaac is like my favorite so far.
His voice really does it for me.
Yeah, he's got a good voice.
He's also so romantic. I don't know. He really wooed me. Anyway.
He seems very down to earth.
Yeah.
A lot of the characters are very, they're extreme versions of, they are types. Like I feel like they are types that you have probably met or know someone who, in my case, know someone who dated. But yeah, he seems like, well, I guess, he seems the most down to earth. He seems most like the type I'm most interested in. Just like kind, generous, straightforward.
Absolutely.
Maybe a square.
Yeah. Maybe a square, but you can kind of help him come out of his sheath a little bit. Oh yeah. So there's one girlfriend, and then there's two non-binary people and a cat.
And a cat. Just throw that out there.
And it was cool. I mean, so my character is non-binary too, so I use they them pronouns, and it was cool. There's two non-binary characters in the game that you can romance. One is named Sawyer and one is named Rowan, which right away is like so trans mask. But that's the thing, is that I felt like the two non-binary characters were very much coded as like trans masculine, androgynous, skinny people. Sawyer is this total like ooh tender queer college student. Like they're like, oh, I'm late for class. Oh, I made breakfast. Here's a picture of my breakfast. I'm so clumsy and silly and random. And then the other non-binary person is Rowan, who's a literal witch with like a raven on their shoulder.
Oh, wow.
I mean, Rowan's pretty hot. I'm about it. But I think that there's something to be said for it. It feels like in the mainstream depiction of what a non-binary person is, it very much trends to this idea of like a sweet and gentle and childish, androgynous, kind of sexless, softened, rounded version of like there's so many ways to be non-binary.
Yeah. And we kind of just see one primary version of that.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, two non-binary characters. I thought I would maybe see a little bit more variance in the types of non-binariness that we explore, especially because the boyfriends in the game are so sexy and they're so like romantic, and there's things about them that, you know, kind of sweep you off your feet. Like I felt very wooed by Valeria, who is the dagger and the one woman that you can date. But also stuff about the men like either were intriguing or deep or mysterious in some way, versus the non-binary characters, which felt more like these magical, like non-binary pixie dream person depictions of what a non-binary person is. So like, at the same time, there are very much non-binary people who exist who this, I'm sure, resonates with. So I'm not trying to say that it's inherently bad. I just think, I don't know, it's probably just reminiscent of how little non-binary representation we have to begin with. So, of course, I'm happy that in a dating sim, I even have the option to date non-binary characters. And there was a cool moment, too, where I felt like with my interactions with Sawyer, who's the kind of younger college student age character, like when we first met, they texted me and were like, oh, it's so cool to meet another non-binary person. Like, can I buy you coffee? Like, I love this coffee shop. Like, let's meet up there. And like, a lot of that felt very authentic. Like, I've definitely had interactions just like that with other like trans guys. But it's also like, I don't know, where are the trans women or the like non-binary femmes or like, like I just want to see, like there's more and I want to see it. So that was a little like, again, very light critique. If anything, I'm excited to see, you know, what Kitfox Games does next. Hey, maybe there's DLC where we get more romanceable swords. Like the game very much encourages you to go on dates with everybody. Like it doesn't try to force you to be monogamous. So I'm just, you know, I think it's a great start and I'm excited to see how this opens the doors for more non-binary representation to be out there.
But, and they did, I saw that, I think it was one of the developers of the game put out a tweet saying that the like basically they've already made back the sales have been way above and beyond in one day, and that's, you know, Game Pass. Like we don't know all the intricacies of the deals that studios make on Game Pass, but they're not getting those aren't game sales. So it's like in addition to the free quote unquote versions that were getting downloaded through Game Pass, they also sold enough games to set them up. I think the tweet said that basically they had this lump of money and they were looking at trying to figure out like, okay, how many years do we want to be able to live off of this amount of money as a studio? And then how much of it can we give out as bonuses to the folks who worked on the game? And I just think that's cool. I think it's something that the attention of Game Pass helps give. The fact that this got featured in the Nintendo Indie World Showcase this week and was released the same day gave it a lot of buzz. So they'll get to make another game, and hopefully that one will take more steps in this direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tanya Short is the lead developer of Kitfox Games, and she tweeted yesterday, "We sold as many copies of Boyfriend Dungeon in one day as we did in the first week of Moon Hunters in 2016, which is a previous game they made. Plus, we didn't take any outside funding for it, so it's all for Kitfox, baby." Really
That's
happy
awesome.
for them. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's really cool.
Boyfriend Dungeon, I think it's short, sweet, and to the point. See what I did there? It's a real balm, a real great like end of summer fling. Lots of hot people in here. It's a really inclusive game. I love the way too. It kind of like the sword people themselves. There's this kind of like chaser equivalent where they'll kind of be like, oh, like if you're someone who's like when you first meet, you can kind of get to know them as a person, or you can just kind of be like, so can you turn into a sword or not? And there's this, like, people will ask you like, oh, like, do you only date sword people, or do you date like quote unquote, like, or regular people, or wielders as they're called, people who can wield the swords? And there was something there too that resonated in terms of like chasers, like people who own like kind of only date trans people because they're kind of like obsessed with our bodies and not really seeing us for who we are. And so I felt like there was something, I don't know, just really, I felt seen in those conversations too of making the conscious decision to not pick that dialogue option. And also if you do, the fact that I picked one experimentally and someone responded like, oh, I didn't realize you were obsessed with like the body binary of like being a sword person or a non-sword person. And, you know, I like that, making people think a little bit about how they're approaching these relationships. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
So, Boyfriend Dungeon, pick it up today and get ready to take a cold shower. But Jamie, you played something wildly different
I did
these past couple of weeks. So tell me about you. What have you been playing?
Yeah, so I played and completed this game called The Forgotten City, as released a few weeks ago in July on PS4, PS5, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, PC, pretty much everything. Developed by a studio called Modern Storyteller. And if the name The Forgotten City sounds familiar to you at all, it might be that you have heard of the Skyrim mod called Forgotten City, that originally launched in 2015. And this game, The Forgotten City, is actually based on that Skyrim mod. So the original mod, like I said, launched in 2015, was developed by this person, Nick Pierce. It was a quest mod that unlocked a storyline within Skyrim's Forgotten Ruins location, in which the Dragonborn, which is the main character of Skyrim, entered a time portal and was like taken back in time 7 years and had to solve this mystery of the city's past to find an exit out. And it ended up being the first mod in history to win a National Writers Guild award for its script. And it received a ton of like critical acclaim and attention. And all that attention actually helped allow Pierce, the person who developed it, to launch Modern Storyteller, the development studio. And the first game that Modern Storyteller has made, fast forward to now, to today, is the full game, The Forgotten City, which is no longer a Skyrim mod, but it still has a lot of the same DNA as that quest mod did. It's a adaptation / expansion of that original core concept. So it's not a Skyrim mod anymore. It's not set in the world of Skyrim. But you can definitely still see the Skyrim like roots in it. It's still it's a first person perspective. It's a very like beautiful world, but all of the graphics and stuff, you can tell it's made by a smaller team. I would say it kind of looks comparable to what Skyrim looks like today to play, where it's aesthetically still beautiful.
Yeah.
It still holds up, but you can tell it's older. It's a little janky.
Yeah.
The way people move in the world doesn't quite look entirely human all of the time. Characters are a little stiff. When you go up to approach characters to speak with them, they'll turn towards the camera in a way that I would say is very definitively Skyrim or Fallout.
Yeah.
They'll turn around towards you, and then their lips are moving, but it's not really like with the words that they're saying.
Totally.
But the block of text appears on the screen, and then you get your choices of what to say back. All of that feels very Skyrim-esque. But the setting is actually in an old Roman city. And similar to the premise of the mod, you are someone from present day who has stepped through a time portal and ended up in this Roman city known as the Forgotten City, where the inhabitants live seemingly in peace and luxury. It seems like it's some level of a utopia. It's all very lush. There's a beautiful waterfall. Everyone seems to be getting along. But what you quickly understand is that the inhabitants of this city are living under this thing called the Golden Rule. And
spooky.
Yeah. What the Golden Rule is this decree that if any one person in the city commits a sin, the entire city will suffer for it.
Oh my God.
There's literally, like, at various points in the game, this booming voice that will say, "Many shall suffer for the sins of the one."
Oh my God.
And so the people are essentially living in fear and terror of making any small mistake that might result in the collapse of their entire community.
Oh my God.
What you learn pretty early in the game, when you first step through the time portal, you are brought to the magistrate of the town. And he quickly explains to you that he believes that he has created the time portal because he's been doing research on how to open such a wormhole to try to bring in help from outside, because the people that are living in the city are stuck here and there's no way to get out of the city. They're living under this horrible rule and they're afraid for their lives, basically. And all of the pleasantness that you see is a little bit of a facade. But there's a lot of political unrest brewing. There's an election coming up and there's someone running against the magistrate who doesn't believe that the Golden Rule is real. There's a lot of concern that the Golden Rule is about to be broken from the magistrate. So he had been doing research on how to open a wormhole. And what he believes is that basically the Golden Rule has been broken in his own future. And he opened this wormhole and you stepped through it. And now you've been pulled into this time loop. And that does bear to be true. So the way the game plays out is that you've been tasked by the magistrate to try to figure out who is going to break the Golden Rule and how can we stop it. He believes that in order for you to get home, you need to create a paradox in which the portal never needs to be opened because the Golden Rule is never broken. And therefore you would just magically snap back to your own timeline, right?
But if the Golden Rule is never broken, then aren't all those people trapped forever in this surreal fake utopia?
So the magistrate kind of ends up not being the best dude. And that's not super intense spoilers or anything. His goal is really just to keep people alive. Okay. And as the game progresses, it asks a lot of questions about what does it mean to sin? Where does your own line of morality fall? What are you willing to do for the sake of keeping everyone else alive? And the mantra of do unto others as you would have done to you. If you are someone who wouldn't care if someone tried to screw you over, does that make it okay to screw other people over? Where are those lines drawn, and how do we actually live by moralistic, and who decides?
Who's the arbiter?
Who decides what's good and what's bad, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
So the game actually poses a lot of these questions, I think, in really interesting ways. But the actual gameplay is essentially a narrative detective story where you're going around through the world. There's 20 or so people who live in this town. And you're talking to them, you're learning about their lives. You can ask them all how they came to be in this place and get their backstories. And you start to pull at all these different threads, trying to figure out why is everyone here? Who created this place? What is the purpose of this? Also, all around the city, there are these golden statues. and they're kind of fucking creepy. And sometimes they will whisper at you. What? And what you very quickly realize is that when you turn away from them, their heads turn to follow you. And it's very, very disarming.
No, thank you.
And at first it like really creeped me out. But as the story progresses, you get a little more used to it. Still kind of creepy. Right? But you
just
get the sense
used to constant surveillance. It's fine.
Exactly, right? So like you're being surveilled. You're not sure who's surveilling. There's these whispers that are coming from the statues that seem to be trying to help you, but they're telling you things that like they couldn't possibly know or like they shouldn't know.
What?
Sometimes they say things that kind of predict the future. Like there's one moment where you run into this woman and she's like, oh, there's a guy hiding in the bathhouses. I think he's an assassin. Can you like go deal with him? I'm going to go hide in this old temple over here that's not being used. And the voices whisper, no, don't go in the temple. And you can try to tell the woman not to go into the temple, but all you can say is like, a voice told me. And so she's like, yeah, I'm going to go in the temple anyway. And she goes in there and it collapses on her.
What?
And she dies.
Bro. So then you don't get golden rule breaking punishment for letting her go in there?
Well, no, because I didn't know, right? It's all about whether you knew or not and like do unto others and like who did what. All right. So you have to start finding ways to manipulate both time and the people stuck in the time loop to start to solve problems within the game and work your way towards like ending this time loop and solving the ultimate mystery of who put everyone in this situation. And it's, I don't know, it's not especially, I didn't think it was especially challenging. Like usually if you just kind of go around and talk to everyone, the ways to like move things around is going to be pretty apparent pretty quickly. Unless like you only wouldn't see possible solutions if you're just not doing the core thing that the game tells you to do, which is to go around and talk to everyone. As long as you're going around and talking to everyone, you're going to find the path that you need to take to various things pretty easily. So it's not challenging, but you still feel really smart when you figure out how to solve a particular problem, even though it wasn't that hard to solve. You're like, yeah, I'm a fucking genius. I just used the time loop against itself. And I just like manipulated this thing into happening.
Yeah.
And things do, so obviously if you, I'm an idiot, or not an idiot. I'm a dick. And I went into the game and the magistrate tells me this whole thing about the golden rule. And he's like, yeah, if anybody sins, like everyone's going to die. So don't break any rules, go figure it out. And literally the first thing I did when he finished the conversation is I walked over to his chest that was in the same room that he was in, and I stole all of the gold out of it.
Yeah.
And immediately the screen goes gray, black and white, and that booming voice is like, many shall suffer for the sins of the one. Yeah. And everything starts shaking. And it tells you run back to the time portal.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
And so you start running, and several of the golden statues have come alive and are shooting people with bows and arrows and turning them into gold. And you have to run away from them. And it's so scary and stressful, and run back to the time portal and reset the time loop.
Whoa. So the golden statues are like angels or something. Like
some of them are and some of them aren't. But yes, some of them have these golden bows and they come attack people, and their like eyes light up. And even for it being
Sodom and Gomorrah shit.
Yeah, even for it being like kind of like the graphics aren't quite there or whatever, it still like creates a really powerful atmosphere. And there were still moments where I felt like a very heightened, like stressed because I was running from them, or scared that they were gonna like get me as I was running back to the portal.
Oh my god.
And if they get you and turn to gold, like it does kill you and you have to reload a last save. Like you can't just, the game doesn't have any checkpointing, which I think is one thing that was a little frustrating at times. Like if I forgot to save frequently, I could end up having to go redo a lot of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you like detective games, if you like solving puzzles, the game has almost no combat in it. And actually, I would say that is kind of the one weak area of the game, is that it does bother to put any combat in it at all. Though the section, like the quest line that includes the combat, is super interesting. I don't think the game itself really needed the combat. But yeah, most of it is going around talking to people, learning what's up with them, and then kind of like manipulating events to try to figure it all out. I think it's got some similar threads to roguelikes. It's got some similar threads to something like the Outer Wilds.
Oh, wow.
Where,
Time loop.
Yeah, because every time you start the city up again and step out of the wormhole, things are back to where they were before. And you generally know, like, okay, this person's going to be doing this and this person's going to be doing this. But it does give you ways to kind of work around that. And so, like, if in your previous loop you had to do like these 4 things right away when you came through the time loop to make sure that XYZ would happen, it gives you ways to like employ other people to do those things for you so that you're not constantly running around doing the same errands, basically, as you work your way through the story. But I think even just as like a straightforward kind of detective mystery, time loopy sort of narrative, it was really interesting. And then kind of all of these other moral questions that it folds on top of it just really made it an enjoyable game. It made me really think about, like who sets the rules, how we set the rules as a society, how we take care of each other as a community. I guess, with everything going on with COVID, I found myself thinking like the idea of like a community of strangers having to be responsible for each other's well-being and safety is like a real situation that we are in right now. And we are by and large failing at it as a, and so the fact that like, I think the game really asks the question of like, can humans collectively be responsible for each other in a real way? Do they feel responsible for each other? And will they actually take care of each other and do the right thing to make sure all of humanity survives? And in kind of a nihilistic way, the game says no. Like, no, we won't. Someone will always fuck it up.
True. The game's not wrong so far.
Yeah. I just like, as much as I want to believe that like we can build community, and I do still think we can, it's hard to believe that it's ever going to work across the board, especially like the more and more people you involve in that and the more disparate those people are. I mean, in this particular town, there's people who came from so many different backgrounds, and, there's some folks who just don't care, or they don't believe in the golden rule, or they don't, So how all of these things about belief and care for each other and how you see yourself in relation to other people, how all of that plays into whether or not we're willing to sacrifice a small amount of our own comfort, whether that's free will, comfort, to take care of everyone else. Like, not everyone's willing to do that, unfortunately.
These people say they don't believe in the golden rule, but they're still not breaking it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into spoilers, but some of the folks who say they don't believe it do eventually break it. Like, if you do nothing and just let the story of the game play out, it will essentially play through a day, and then that evening the rule will be broken no matter what you do.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So you can't just live there indefinitely. The rule is on track to be broken, and you have to try to disrupt the things that are going to result in it being broken.
Gotcha. Okay, wow. This is definitely a game, like, don't judge this game by its cover, because I certainly did, and I was like, this game was boring as fuck. But, like, it just has this very, like, Roman, like, it almost looks like a Clash of King, or I know lots of people like that game, but, like, it just doesn't at all seem like what it is.
Yeah, no. The image and stuff for it all looks very...
a historical visual novel is what it looks like.
Exactly. Yes, that's what it looks like. That's not. I mean, there is stuff in there that's historical. If you're interested in that kind of stuff and you want to learn more about it, you can have conversations with folks. But the actual core concept of the game is much more complicated and much more about communities of people, how we rely on each other, or how that may be impossible, and then like all the morality behind that, whether or not morality is debatable, or how we set it and decided as a group. So definitely worth your time. I think to get to the ending, the game has several different endings that you can achieve. I think I might go back at some point and try to get some of the other endings, but I got the ending that I got. It popped a trophy called canon, so I think it's like the quote unquote real ending of the game, and can kind of get other branching narrative paths. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I really liked the way it ended. I thought it was really interesting. And I think it took like maybe 10 or so hours. So it's not an especially long game, but it has a lot of replayability if you want to go back and keep futzing with things and seeing different ways that things can play out. So I definitely recommend checking it out. It was a good time.
I like the juxtaposition of our two games today because I feel like they both have visual novel qualities. They're both around 10 hours to play. And I feel like your game was kind of taking that, like those questions of, you know, how do we take care of each other? Is it possible for us to have this utopian society? Like can that happen? And probably not. Whereas I feel like Boyfriend Dungeon kind of takes this approach of like, what if we lived in a society where people were happy to share and people were not holding on to jealousy or letting their emotions rule them? Like, because you're dating all these people and they all know that you're dating other people, but there's never like there's reactions you can have where you express jealousy, and the game kind of asks you to think about like, is this really a problem, or are you just jealous? And what are you going to do about your jealousy? Are you gonna turn it against your partner, or are you going to resolve it and grow as a person? And I feel like that, like everyone around you is just wants the best for you and for each other. They want everyone to be happy. And so it just feels like they're kind of two sides of the same coin of like, what would it look like if we lived in a queer utopian future? And also like, why do humans suck so much?
Yeah. That's an interesting kind of parallel that you drew there. I like that a lot.
That's why they pay me the big podcast bucks.
Oh, yeah, those big podcast bucks. Just line in our pockets.
We print them out. It says one podcast buck.
One podcast buck. Yes. Wallpapering the walls with it in the studio. All right, let's go ahead and transition over to our guest. Our guest for you today is a journalist and content writer working at the intersection of technology, space, and pop culture. Yes, that is an intersection that exists. She's the co-editor of the book Sword Stone Table, Old Legends, New Voices, an anthology of inclusive retellings from the vast lore surrounding King Arthur, Camelot, and the Knights of the Round Table. And she's the co-host of the geek pop news podcast, Desi Geek Girls. Her name is Swapna Krishna, and we had a dynamic conversation covering stuff like the cultural importance of futuristic space stories like Star Trek and Mass Effect, why it's okay to be enthusiastic about the things you love, and why productivity and nostalgic indulgence are not moral opposites, and in fact, they don't need to be moralized at all. We had such a fun and engaging time with Swapna, and I am sure that you all will too. So without further ado, here's our interview with Swapna Krishna.
Hello, and thank you to our wonderful guest for joining us in the virtual Pixel Therapy studio. To start, can you share your name, your pronouns, and just a little bit about how you spend your time?
Yes, I am Swapna Krishna. Pronouns are she, her. And I spend my time playing a lot of video games. I know it'll shock everybody who's listening to this podcast right now. What?
Amazing. And Swapna, I've stumbled upon your work because you write at this intersection of like technology and gaming and mental health. And I've also seen that, at least based on the picture of you and LeVar Burton on your website and your work covering Star Trek for Sci-Fi Wire, I'm just going to guess that you're a big fan. Is that true? Yeah.
I mean, I was going to try and be like cute about it, but no, I am like an unabashed, diehard Star Trek fan. So,
oh my God, So I feel like you're the first like Trekkie we've had on the show, and I am a big Next Generation fan, and I'm just wondering if you could tell us a bit about what the show means to you and why it's something that has been a passion so much so that you've sort of like built a career around it.
I have, yeah. Okay, so I may get teary while talking about it because Star Trek means a lot to me. It was kind of the first place as a kid, a person of color, that I saw myself represented on The Next Generation through LeVar, who is a fantastic person and fantastic human. He's been such a friend. And So that's kind of how it started, but it's the reason I have the career I do now. As you said, right, the kind of the intersection of technology and pop culture and space and video games and all of this stuff. And I try to draw upon with everything I do, the values that I like to say that kind of Captain Picard taught an entire generation, like what it means to be a good person. And
my gosh.
I genuinely believe that, because I try to put those values into my writing, and the idea of it's okay to be enthusiastic. You don't have to be cynical. Love what you love unabashedly and be enthusiastic and be earnest. And I feel like these are a lot of things society tells us isn't cool. And I'm just like, no, it is the coolest thing in the world to be passionate about something and want to tell people about it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I learned that from Star Trek, and that's like the entirety of what I do on the internet and everywhere else.
What you said just made me think, like, when I was young, like 12 years old, 13 years old, I got really into watching Star Trek, and just the character of Captain Picard being such a steadfast leader, but also sensitive and also inclusive. And like, I really felt like he was like a father figure or an example of a good man that like I never had.
Yes.
And I remember how deeply it affected me when I learned that Sir Patrick Stewart, the actor, for anyone who for some reason does not know who Jean-Luc Picard is, when I learned that he was someone who has suffered through childhood abuse and domestic violence, and is someone who retained his kindness, and who is someone who like I think just as someone who's experienced childhood trauma, I at least personally, and from what I've connected with on others about it, is like you often feel like there's something wrong with you, like you're the reason, or that you don't deserve good things, or that you're destined to be just like your parents or guardian or whatever adult figure was traumatic in your life. And seeing him as just the opposite of that was so important to me. And you just reminded me of that. So thank you.
I'm glad. Have you seen that like video of like a fan, like there's a video of him talking about this stuff at a like convention because a fan asked him about it. It is the most moving thing. And he's one of those people that whenever somebody says, oh, you know, people are set in their ways in terms of inclusivity, or you just can't expect them to know better because of their age. It's like, well, look at Patrick Stewart. Like, you can expect and ask for better.
Right. Look at this old white man who's still learning, still growing, never is done. If he can freaking do it, and he's like almost 100, then you can't. So Swapna, what's your personal history with video games? You mentioned that you write at this intersection, but what's your sort of personal history there?
So I've been a gamer all my life. It has taken a long time for me to accept that title because I always felt like an imposter and that I wasn't enough of a gamer to call myself a gamer. But I have been a gamer all my life. I had the original Nintendo, the Sega. And I did much more computer gaming than console gaming when I was a kid, like King's Quest 7, Myst, Riven, those kinds of computer games. Oh my God, SimCity.
Oh my God, SimCity, yes.
Much SimCity. But so I've always been a gamer, but I don't think I ever really started interrogating what it meant as part of my identity until like the last few years when there was a lot of, negativity in the gaming universe. And a lot of us, I think, stepped back and asked, like, am I part of this community? What does it mean? And so, but I've been a big fan of gaming all my life for a lot of reasons, including it just, and this is a theme that runs through, I think, my written work, that it's an escape and it provides a very needed, escape from real life in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm. Beyond it providing an escape, like when you think about why you game, what comes to mind?
Right now, it's just needing to turn my brain off. Turn off that it's there's so it's just like the world is it's
the world is fuck.
Yeah, it's hard all the time. And like, I don't want to say that like, we're, because it's been hard. It's been hard forever. But like the last couple of years have just been, and like, you know, I'm a new parent. My son's 2.5. You know, this pandemic started, he was 15 months old. So this has been the bulk of his life, like dealing with this and having, you know, me coming to terms with what I mean, who I am as a parent and what this means for his life. Like, this is his normal. And just the pandemic has shaped a lot of my parenting. There's a lot of things I chose to do that I wouldn't have done had we not had it. And so there's a lot of that, and that constant buzz that's going through your head. That's like, am I doing good enough? And am I like, are these mistakes gonna like we are all, I'm of the opinion that we all are gonna traumatize our children. Our parents traumatized us. We will traumatize our own children. It's just trying to do better and like traumatize. I would like to traumatize my child in a different way than I was traumatized. Like, and just so it's like, is this like where, like, I think being real about that is important as a parent, because we're not perfect, but also like figuring out how to do our best and what that is, and letting my son be the person he is. And my job is to figure that out and help him figure that out and be that best person, not any sort of coming from an immigrant background. It was a lot of, for me, what I, like what my parents expected of me and what they wanted for me. And I feel so strongly about what I want for him is for him to be the person he is. Like, that's it. I want to help him figure that out and give him an open, you know, and childhood. And it's so hard, you know, right now with everything. And so I think a lot of why I have, retreated into gaming in a lot of cases. And I think I would use that word retreating because I need to turn that off, and nothing is immersive enough. In other times I'm a huge reader, but like books are not quieting that anxious part of my brain. And so video games do, because it keeps my hands busy. It keeps my, you know, brain busy. And I need that level of engagement.
Yeah. And what's so rewarding about the engagement that you specifically get with games?
I think there's a lot. I think it depends on the kind of game, of course, but I think it combines a lot of what I love. Mostly I play kind of the action adventure style RPGs. I do some straight RPGs, but just kind of that, you know, the AAA action adventure style game, because there's so much of it. I'm a huge fan of storytelling generally, and I think storytelling is so therapeutic, and there's so much, you know, a Star Trek fan, like there's so much about storytelling that can speak to us and help us, you know, come to terms with our own lives or help us learn new things. And I think the best video games do that. Absolutely. They have some of the best some fantastic storytelling. So there's that, but there's also just giving. A lot of these games give you a choice in narrative, especially these days, choice in narrative. Like, you can control, it's giving you a sense of control when the world feels out of control. I think there's that. I think there's a lot of it. And part of it is just, you know, like the physical, keeping my hands busy so I can't pick up a phone and scroll, doom Twitter, because that's what I do. Like when I'm watching TV, I'm like scrolling my phone constantly, and so it's part of why I've almost, for the most part, stopped watching TV, except for basically like 3 or 4 shows, because I can't. It's hard for me to engage with new things because the anxiety of not knowing what to expect. But I don't have that, interestingly, I don't have that anxiety with video games, because even if I play a new game and I don't know what to expect, I think there's a few reasons I don't have that anxiety, even though I'm just as invested in the characters and the story. And part of it is that sense of control. Part of it, I think, is that in a lot of cases, especially with these AAA titles, the story is a lot more drawn out than like one season of a TV show. So you have time to adjust to the changes. You can see the story coming and you can adjust to it, versus a show like, for example, one of my favorite shows right now that I cannot watch is like For All Mankind, which is on Apple TV Plus. It's a fantastic show, retelling of, you know, kind of the early space race. It's totally in my wheelhouse. Ron Moore, who did Star Trek Deep Space Nine, like so much, and I cannot watch it because I'm too anxious. It makes me too anxious. So, and which is so sad. So
anxious because, like, are you scared it's gonna disappoint you, or that you don't want it to be over and then you don't have to watch it anymore? Or
I'm afraid bad things are gonna happen to the people I love. And like, there's enough bad in the world right now. I need like flowers and roses and happy smelly, or smelly is good. Happy, nice, rosy smelling things in my entertainment. Like, I'm just in a place where everything feels very difficult, and like I need my entertainment to not trigger my anxiety.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, what you said about the way games that give that sense of control and the engagement in a different way from just reading a book or watching a show, that resonated so deeply. I am also someone who has like 4 comfort shows, and it's so difficult for me to branch out. And as you were talking, I was trying to think too, like what it is. And it really must be that I keep coming back to the aspect of control. Like, there's something about sinking into a game and the way it places you so deeply into the story. And you're not just a captive observer of whatever the whims of whoever filmed it and edited it and wrote it and how they want you to interpret the story. Like, you have that avatar, and you're impacting and affecting the world around you in a way that is totally separate when you're watching or reading something. I just love that. Thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like, it feels like maybe it's also a little bit of like this is the person I want to be. Does that make sense? Like, you can make a choice in a video game and just be like, I can be maybe a little bit better of a person than maybe I am in real life, because I can make these choices in the video game, and maybe the fact that I want to make these choices makes me a better person than I think I am, you know?
Wow. Yes. I am the most unselfish, unrealistic version of myself when I play games. The most noble version of myself.
Yep.
Wow. And I love the way that you kind of take that and turn it into an opportunity to realize that we do have the capacity for that inside of ourselves. And games are a place where we can explore that in a high stakes environment that isn't always something that happens in your day-to-day in real life.
Absolutely. And I think like one thing that struck me is with, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which is just Mass Effect is like, was so important to me. It's such a like, it's so transformative. It was so transformative for me in a lot of ways. But I think like there's been a lot of interviews with the, original developers and the writers and stuff like that. And the revelation that like something like 95% of people did a Paragon run was like, I was just like, oh, like, it's not just me, because like I'm like one of those people. I was like, I need like the light halo around my head, like every single choice I have to make, and it's just like, and I was like, oh, it's not just me. It's, no, like, cause I figured, people got their aggression out by like playing this renegade character. And it turns out, no, we're all just little sparkly humans who want to do what's nice and like have a smile on our face at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a way higher percentage than I would have assumed. Right? And for the folks at home who may not be aware, there's 2 ways that you can play Mass Effect. There's like this morality system that's pretty much iconic from the game. And you can be a Paragon, which is like a selfless, heroic, Swapna mentioned the halo, just kind of like being the good person, the good leader. And then there's the renegade run, where it's kind of like, I guess you could kind of say it's like a good cop, bad cop paradigm. Like maybe a renegade is more likely to sacrifice things in order to get what needs to be done. Maybe more ruthless, seen as more ruthless, but still a leader. I definitely want to dive more into Mass Effect, but before I do that, I wanted to take a beat to mention that, just while we're on the topic of games in general, something that I really appreciate about your writing is how you really kind of advocate for taking it easy in games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. And I was wondering if you could tell us more about why you are such an unapologetic fan of easy mode.
So the short answer is I am I love video games, but I'm not very good at them. So that's the short answer. Like, honestly, it's just, for example, with like Mass Effect, we talked about the first 2 games didn't really have an easy mode. And back when they first came out, like I don't remember if we were married then or just dating, but I asked my husband to help me pass stuff. And it was really frustrating because I couldn't, like, I especially shooters, I get very anxious when someone starts shooting at me. And then I'm like, you see like the red that like it's like coming at you from this direction. You're like, I can't see it. And then like I do the video game equivalent of just like dropping my gun and running away because like I don't know, there's somebody shooting at me. What am I supposed to do? So it's not just that like I'm not very coordinated, which is also the case, but it's like it also just makes me anxious. So I have really loved over the past like decade or so the rise of easy mode for a lot of reasons, but I think just in general, I think allowing people, I am very, very big on being inclusive. I'm very good on like, if it's not hard to make it more accessible to more people, like, why wouldn't you? I don't understand. Like, I guess just mentality is if you can make something without a lot of effort more accessible to more people, why wouldn't you? And especially, and so I do say a lot in my columns, like it can be harder for independent studios that don't have as many resources to do like very detailed and intricate easy modes. But for these AAA titles, I think every AAA title should have a very easy mode because they can, and they have the budgets and they have the capacities, and these games need to sell really well to justify their huge production budgets. So why wouldn't you make them as accessible as possible to everybody so more people can buy them? And it's not just like I am bad at video games, but for people who can't do rapid button presses or people who, like making them more accessible to a larger audience is just, I mean, it's like, it is a no-brainer for me. And it's shocking sometimes when I get pushback on it because I'm just like, I understand some of the pushback I don't agree with, but I can at least see where it's coming from. But some of it I am just like, don't you understand that like if we can't expand the base of video game players, this industry is not going to survive. Absolutely. And if you want to keep playing the games that you love, we need to expand the player base. The model is broken right now.
Absolutely. Like, let's get away from this entire binary of good gamers and bad gamers. Like, what does that mean? Why does being a good gamer have to be synonymous with having the most overwhelming and complex experience possible with a game?
Yes. And it's not like I'm saying let's do away with hard mode altogether.
Of course. Right.
It's like you can still have that. And you can still have your like, oh my gosh, I passed X on insanity mode. And absolutely. I'm like, okay, you do that. You do you. Like, it's just, I like it. I am just, and maybe it's just, I don't know, like, but I feel like making things more inclusive can only lead to better places.
Absolutely. Like, I have endless, undying admiration and respect for people who play The Last of Us 2 on grounded mode. And this, folks, is when you play an incredibly hard and stressful game on a mode where there are very few items and health and ammo available in the world. And on top of that, if you die once, you need to start the game over from the very beginning.
Is this the same thing as the permadeath mode?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
A friend of mine did that, and he was texting me the whole time, and I'm like, why would you do this to yourself? Like why are you doing it? Why? I'm like, just I don't understand.
Yeah, like, love that for you.
Yes.
But let me live too, because I'm never going to do that.
Yep.
Awesome. And I also noticed that a lot of your writing seems to be geared towards making gaming, like you said, more accessible to folks who are inexperienced with games or maybe more casual or time-pressed gamers. And I was wondering, what kind of relationship do you want to help people foster with gaming?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I want people to not see gaming as something. I think there's a lot of the gaming community can be very difficult. And I think the idea of these like $500, $600 consoles can make people feel like there's a huge barrier to starting playing video games. So I think one of the things I really feel strongly about is just making it seem like there's not such a huge hurdle to like trying out a video game, becoming a gamer. It's actually one of the reasons I'm a huge fan of like Apple Arcade. I think Apple Arcade is fantastic for a lot of reasons, but it just kind of lowers the bar. If you have an iOS device, you could play. It's a very reasonable monthly fee, and you have access to all these fantastic games. But I think just like telling people you have a home here if you want it, and if you are a gamer, if you want to be a gamer, that's it. I think I mentioned before, it took me a long time to feel comfortable using that title because I do play on easy mode anytime. I can. And I do play a lot of like cutesy, Cozy Grove, Animal Crossing, the cutesy, like sweet, wholesome type games because I want to go like fetch apples for you. Like, yes, I will absolutely go like around this island and do that. Like, and because like, that is legitimate and that is legitimate gaming. Like I was reading this and I feel so bad that I don't know the person's name, but somebody had this like take that was, basically like, I don't understand why people are like, oh, why you just go around and run errands for people. That's not gaming. And it's like, what do you think going and assassinating this person in this game is? That's running an errand for somebody. It's just like,
yeah.
And so it's just like, it's the same thing. And like, it's just, and so I don't, there's nothing legitimate or illegitimate about the games you play. Any game is, if you play like Candy Crush on your phone and you want to call yourself a gamer, do it. Like more the merrier. And and I also want people to like play kind of what I call like gateway drug games. Like Animal Crossing is a big one. Yeah. Like just like come over to our side. It's a lot of fun here, that type of thing.
Yeah. Like realizing how much there is, like that any one idea of what gaming is just a small fraction, like barely scratching the surface of all that there is to play and explore. I love that. And so before we move on to the Mass Effect conversation, I did want to take a beat because a book that you recently co-edited with Jen Northington called Sword Stone Table, Old Legends, New Voices just came out. It's an anthology of inclusive retellings surrounding of the vast lore surrounding King Arthur, Camelot, and Knights of the Round Table. Can you give us a taste of what folks can expect from the book / what is an inclusive retelling?
Yes. Okay. So it's 16 stories from all kinds of different authors, amazing authors. Like Alexander Chee wrote a story, a retelling of Sir Gawain on the Green Knight set on Mars.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It's just like Silvia Moreno Garcia wrote this like futuristic like Lady of Shalott story, like if you want to see Arthur and Merlin kiss, you can do that in this anthology.
We do. We certainly do.
If you want lesbian questing lady knights,
hell yeah,
that story is in our anthology. Anthony Rapp wrote it, who, if you are a Star Trek fan, you know from Star Trek Discovery and also amazing productions like Ren. His career has gone been around. He's such a huge personality. He made his fiction debut in our anthology, writing a Merlin story set during the 1980s AIDS crisis.
Wow.
I know. It's a doozy. Like, it is so good and just so like, the ending is just, and so like, that's the kind of stuff we wanted to, for people who love this legend, to be able to write the story they wish they had as a kid. That was kind of the way we approached people. And we're like, if you love King Arthur, what's a story you wish you'd been able to read? And like, we didn't ask them to write themselves or their marginalization into a story because I'm not comfortable gatekeeping like that.
Definitely.
But if they chose to, and many of them did, that's fantastic. And so, we tried to, gather all these, writers who you wouldn't normally expect to write a King Arthur story. And I'm really proud of it.
I need this book immediately. So where can folks find Swordstone Table?
Anywhere you buy your books. So it's on, if you are an independent bookstore fan, you could definitely get it on bookshop.org or order it through your indie.
Great.
Barnes & Noble, I know, is carrying it. Amazon has carrying all the shelves. Amazon, of course, has it. And so anywhere you buy books.
Swapna, on this show, we like to talk to guests about games that have had an impact on their life. And you mentioned Mass Effect to us. So just to kick things off, for folks who maybe have never played the game, how would you describe it in a couple sentences?
It is the sci-fi epic that I had dreamed of my entire life in video game form.
Just as someone who in general has their work at this intersection of technology, space, and pop culture, plus, you're a Star Trek fan, makes sense that you'd be a Mass Effect fan. What do you think makes space such a rich setting for storytelling?
I think because the possibilities are really endless, and we right now still don't have a very good idea of what's out there. I feel like we're learning new things every day. Like the fact that the things that we learn that we take for granted now, like exoplanets, planets outside our solar system, we haven't, just if you think about what we knew when I was growing up, this is a sensitive topic. Some people feel very strongly about this, but Pluto was still a planet. And then we learn more about, the solar system, where we live, our place in it, and then, change that because that's, we found a lot more objects like Pluto, basically, when we thought it was the only one. And so the things we learn and the things there are to learn, I think we all acknowledge that, the world could be better. We could be better about, the way we treat each other and the way we treat our planet. And I think imagining ourselves in a future where we've moved past those problems, Star Trek is very utopic, and especially the Next Generation. And that doesn't mean it doesn't have its problems. It was a product of its time. Not trying to say that is, there are definitely some issues. But that being said, the idea, we have the chance to think of ourselves as having grappled with these issues and come out the other side. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Sometimes I get, I think about space and then I'm reminded how it's infinite and still growing, and you just kind of feel wild. I don't know. Yeah.
No, it's something we can't especially I've been talking a lot about the multiverse because of Loki.
Yes. Yeah.
And, the Marvel universe generally is moving to the multiverse and trying to from somebody who, I think the multiple reality, I think that the, infinite realities theory is fascinating. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to talk about it with a friend of mine. She's like, I don't understand. I'm you're not supposed to. Our minds cannot grasp the concept of our own universe and how big it is, much less multiple infinite universes.
So do you think that Jeff Bezos is right and we should shoot all of our trash into space?
Oh my God. That guy.
This freaking guy.
That guy. Let me tell you, the billionaire space race is the worst.
The worst.
I mean, that's actually part of the reason I got out of the day-to-day of covering space, because I'm I just don't want to talk about these guys. I really don't.
Yeah. So tell us more about your relationship to Mass Effect. What does it mean to you?
So I think Mass Effect came at a time in my life where I really needed something to believe in. Star Trek was that for a lot of my, childhood and early adulthood. But then, I think 2005, it went off the air and there was kind of nothing else for a while. And I needed something to, I'm a huge Star Wars fan too. I am not. Star Wars doesn't have the same place in my life that Star Trek does, but I still absolutely love it.
Same. That resonates. Sorry, keep going.
But the original trilogy was not the prequel trilogy was not what I'd hoped. And so I was coming off that. I needed something to believe in, something to connect with, because I do put a lot of myself in the stuff I love. I I give a lot of myself. I invest. That's the word. I was like, I'm looking for a word. I invest a lot of like myself and like my emotions into the things I love. And so I needed that at that time. And that was it for me. Like Mass Effect and like I go back and play the first game now and I'm like, it's good, but like it doesn't really get good until like the second game, but I'm just like, but I think then it was just like, I needed something and this was it. And so it filled that kind of space. I always say there's always a space shaped hole in my heart, like always. And that kind of filled this for me because it was this like sci-fi epic. And I'm also really interested in that time period of like, what happens after, like if we meet the first, like alien race that's not like bacteria, like, and so I think the idea of the time frame of it really interested me too, because like we just, in the game, humanity has met all these other like species in the galaxy and we've just come off of a war. We fought a war with the first, and I think that's very realistic. Like as much as I love Star Trek, it is very, I don't know that I see, we're still very much in the pre-World War III era of Star Trek. Like just I don't know. We're not, we can't even get along with ourselves. Like, and so it felt very real to me.
Yeah. Like I like how, I'll build on that context a little bit. Just in the world of Mass Effect 1, it's like humanity has very recently joined this essentially intergalactic, council of peers, and some alien species have been part of this, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like confederation for thousands of years. And humanity has really just entered the scene. And the way that you sort of realize, like when you're in the game, you spend a lot of time in this big space station called the Citadel, where you see a lot of interaction between all sorts of extraterrestrial species. And as a human, like you're really struck by how small and weak and technologically inadvanced you are in comparison to so many of these species. And that's something that I feel like is really, really unique. Like you don't really see that. Like in a lot of these shows, like you were mentioning, we've already gotten to the point where humans are like on the same page as these other alien species. And it just really sort of drives home how small we are. Like, again, coming back to that theme of like how small we are in the universe and how much there is to find. I don't know if you had if that resonated with you at all, if there's anything you wanted to add there.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to feel small. I think it's a good thing to feel like we're part of something bigger and not the thing that's bigger, if that makes sense. Like we are not the thing that's bigger, but we can be part. Like I think that's when, generally people are at their best when they're all working together towards something bigger versus just deciding like, nope, we're it. That's it. And I think one of the things I really like about just Mass Effect and the way they portray it is, not everybody's happy about humanity. Humanity is a new kid on the block, and there's all these races, alien races that are like, why does humanity get special treatment? And because they're important. Our importance in the game is outsized compared to how far along. Technologically we might be catching up quickly, but we're a little bit the new kids on the block. And I really like the dynamics of the game are very complex, and they do a very good job, like kind of displaying what it would like, all the like interspecies tensions and the like stuff. It's just really interesting, and it's not clean or easy. It's like very messy, and it feels, I don't know, it feels like the best sci-fi, that you read. But I think, and I'm sure that there were plenty of sci-fi games, like Halo, but I didn't play Halo.
Yeah, I don't.
So I don't know. Like, but Halo is like a great example of I know, sorry, but it's a great example of a sci-fi game there were definitely sci-fi games, but this is the first one that like I really played and engaged with, and it just felt so like this is the best sci-fi story I have experienced in a long time. And I'd been wanting that experience in a video game form, and it was like, finally.
On that storytelling aspect, I wanted to read a quick bit from an article by, there's a queer games journalist named Kenneth Shepard, and he wrote this article for Fanbyte on why Mass Effect still matters. And he writes, the Mass Effect trilogy is still special after all these years because it takes people on the same journey, but leaves enough gaps to fill that no one experiences or remembers it the same way. Every interaction and decision is colored by who Shepard was in your eyes, what motivations drove their decisions, and who was by their side. By the time I finished Mass Effect 3, the universe had been fundamentally changed by my presence, all in the name of a character who I decided was willing to do whatever it took to save the man that he loved. Through giving me the tools to express myself in this world, it was a game that gave me a chance to understand who I was in mine. And that's because it was a story that I was writing in tandem with BioWare. That singular way it allows you to paint that picture yourself is why Mass Effect still matters today. It influenced a decade of RPGs that would take pieces from it, but nothing like it has really come since. Creating a trilogy where your character, their choices, and their relationships all carry through is still a remarkable feat.
I have chills. I'm experiencing chills right now because that's so true. And I think that is the thing about Mass Effect that I love. That game belongs to every single person who's played it, and all those experiences are unique. And a lot of games have given us choices since then, but no, I agree with the writer. None like that.
Absolutely, like none like that. The scale, the epic scale of following through 3 games and imagining how that must have felt. I haven't even finished Mass Effect and I'm crying right now. Like just imagining how it must have felt in real time to play all 3 and it, like, people write about how 10 years of a decade of their life has been defined by Mass Effect. Yeah. How many types of media can really have that kind of long term, like you're living with it and inside of it. It's beautiful.
And it's 3 games. Like, I talk about Star Trek having 5 series, before its resurgence, which is now it's like 5 more series. But, movies, Star Wars, the original trilogy, this huge expanded universe before, the prequel trilogy, the huge expanded universe of books, and then the prequel trilogy. And then I'm like, Mass Effect, it's 3 games. Yes, there's some tie-in stuff, but I've never consumed that. But that's it.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but it's also amazing that those 3 games, it's 100 to 200 hours of your life, at the same time. So I think that just the scale of it and the amount of love that I think went into it. I don't know a lot about I have heard some not great things about, BioWare and the culture there. And I don't know, in specific details, but what I will say is that the writers clearly loved these characters and they loved the people playing the game because, the little in-jokes and the little things from Mass Effect 1 that show it, like Conrad Werner. It's this just random character that you have these interactions with in the first game, and he's a huge fan of Shepard. And then he shows up in the second game and the third game, and you can completely miss him if you're not looking for him. You don't know he's there, and it's just there are these little things, and he's just this guy, and there's 5 lines of dialogue, and that's it. And but it really is. It really is. It's just very well. Honestly, at the end of the day, it's just very well crafted.
You recently wrote a column for Wired about how Mass Effect has been really good for your mental health. I was wondering if you could tell us more about why that is.
So one of the things that we talked about earlier was nostalgia and rewatching old series. Right now I'm in a middle of a Star Trek Deep Space Nine rewatch because when am I not? Let's be real. But it's just very hard to watch new things. So with Legendary Edition coming out, I was like, okay, I'm just going to replay these games. And it feels comfortable and it feels right. And, there's always the concern that if I'm not, so you had Dr. Devin Price on a previous episode who, I mean, I swear by Laziness Does Not Exist. It's a fantastic book. I encourage everyone to read it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it is. It's like back on my bookshelf in my backdrop. Yeah. Like right. Like it's just mind blowing.
It's mind. And also just follow Devin. Everything they say is gold.
They're a great Twitter follow. But one of the things that it really like reinforced for me is how much I view productivity as I have to be productive in every single thing I do, and my entertainment has to be productive. So why would I replay a game when there's like, why would I have like a list a mile long of games I've bought but I haven't played? Yes. Why would I watch a series because like I have not watched a new series? You know, it's been a while. You know, Star Trek's been off the air, so there's been like Mandalorian's done for the season, so I haven't watched anything new for a while. So why would? And it's like, why? Why can't I play something that feels good? Why can't I, embrace nostalgia because it's what, it's the quiet my mind needs. And I think one of the things that I've been trying to explore with this Wired column is not just, does it feel good, but when is the line between feeling good or not good for mental health? And so yes, nostalgia feels good, but is it counterproductive to, immerse yourself in nostalgia? And I spoke to an expert and he was like, nope, if it feels good, do it. He's like, it is not counterproductive. Video games are great for mental health. And if replaying this series is what's giving you peace, then do it. And I shouldn't need a mental health expert telling me that playing video, but it's just, that's the way my brain works. And the way, I think, as an older millennial, I've been trained at this point to think of okay, if it's good for my mental health, then I can let myself do it. You know what I mean? It's just versus, just being I'm trying, ever since reading Dr. Price's book, I've been trying to get better about just being nope, this is what I want to do. So I'm doing it. Productivity be damned. But it's when you've been coached in that your entire life and you tie your self-worth to how productive you are, which is a huge, I don't understand, how did we get here?
Right.
A little bit, why? And it's just
capitalism.
Absolutely. And it's such a simple thing in a lot of ways that the book does, but it just makes it so clear that no, productivity is not good. Stop equating good with productivity. And so it's a lot of that. And I've been unlearn through the column I read at Wired, I've been trying to unlearn a lot of those things that I have told myself for years that it's just I have a friend who compulsively consumes new media as her relaxation. And I'm that's not me. I'm not that person. I don't need to watch every TV show. I don't need to watch every movie. I have the things I love and I'm happy to try new things, but it's okay if I'm not in a place where I can right now.
Yeah. My brain has enough information inside of it, especially with how common and how prevalent just constantly doom scrolling or taking in new information on social media or the news or whatever notifications you have, email, Slack, work, there's just a constant onslaught. So I often feel when I'm in my relaxation time, the last thing I want is novel information to be coming into my brain.
Yeah. And I think it's just, I feel the exact same way. And because... And also part of it is just there's so much new media. I think I read a thing that Netflix is releasing a new, multiple new things every single day. And it's so much content that no one can keep up with it. Yeah. Even professional, people who just constantly cover streaming and watch Netflix basically, to do their jobs. I won't say they watch it for a living because usually you don't get paid for the time that you're watching media, just the time you're writing about it. So, yeah. So it's just sometimes it's almost just it's easier to rewatch something because I know it's there versus find something new. And by the time I decide on something new, I've run out of time to do it.
Yeah. Right. I know how it'll make me feel. If I want to feel a certain way, I know what I need to do to get me there. I feel like what you were speaking on really just highlights the shame that's been so deeply ingrained in us around letting ourselves engage with these activities. Like even now as an adult, where I know that my parents aren't going to barge in and ask me why I'm being so lazy playing video games. Like if I'm on the couch and someone walks in the room, I still have this immediate like jolt of like, oh, I should look like I'm doing something other than just sitting here playing a video game. Or how long are they going to think I've been sitting here all day just playing a video game? Or like maybe I should get up and do some dishes so that I can justify sitting here and playing a video game. And it's like, there's no one telling me not to play the video game. It's just me like freaking out about it. And it's like, why isn't playing a video game productive? I just saved a planet. So like, you're welcome.
Yes, it's exactly. And I think it's like part of it is like what you just said, tricking yourself into, it's almost like I'm at the point where I have to like trick my mind into thinking like, yes, playing a video game is productive because that's the way I'm wired. And it's just unlearning that is as much work as learning it was. And so, yeah, and I do absolutely agree. I've had to stop telling people, like, if they, like, text or call and be like, oh, what are you doing? I'm not doing nothing. I am consciously making an effort to relax and de-stress and cope with the many things life is throwing at me, not doing nothing. And, like, that's been a big, like, it's been hard because usually, like, if somebody, like, texts or calls and I'm playing a video game, I'll usually just answer it and stop playing the video game. But that's the time I set aside to do this. I need that because it is like video games have become so important when, you know, we, despite what everyone, beside what people are trying to tell us, the pandemic's not over.
Right.
Not going to a movie theater anytime soon. Nope. So what are we doing? Like, how do we de-stress in our houses when we can't go anywhere? And like video games that's a way for me to experience. That's a way for me to, at least my mind, to be transported somewhere else. And so like it's become really crucial for me to have that time every day to play. And if I am trading it away, it needs to be for something that was equally relaxing, or I'm not going to be in a good mood the next day. Like it's not, I don't have the, you know, like I can tell when I don't get my de-stressing time in.
Absolutely. Swapna, thank you so much for joining us on Pixel Therapy. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing this space with you. Where can folks follow your work and keep up with what you're producing, your projects and all of that?
I spent a lot of time on Twitter. So that's probably the best place. I'm at Krishna on Twitter. And I mainly my writing these days is at Wired. So I write a column every other week. It's called Casual Gamer. And I try to talk a lot about the intersection of kind of video games and mental health and, you know, anxiety, stress, all of these sorts of things. And so that's mainly, and of course, you know, I'm doing a lot of book promo these days. So we've got some really cool events coming up. So yeah, you can find all of that on Twitter.
How about your podcast?
Yes, I do have a podcast, don't I? I told you. I said before this, I was like, I'm really bad at promoting myself. I
got you.
A podcast called Desi Geek Girls, co-hosted by my best friend Preeti Chibber. We talk about what it is to be South Asian female identifying people in kind of within through that lens, the pop culture around us. So we talk a lot about Star Wars and Marvel, honestly, but she's fine. I've got her watching some Star Trek these days, and she she keeps threatening me with Supernatural. So we'll see. I've only watched like 2 episodes of the show, but I'm a very big fan of the Supernatural fandom. Because it's fantastic.
Yeah,
and so like she catches me up on what's going on every like couple of weeks, and like it's fantastic.
That is so funny because I've maybe watched 3 or 4 episodes of Supernatural, but being a person on Tumblr in the mid to late teen aughts, like I know everything there is to know about Dean, Castiel, and Sam. I
know. Like I've watched literally like maybe 2 or 3 episodes, and just like the first 2. Like I've never even watched anything with Castiel.
Yeah.
But you better know I know who he is. I am very, very well versed in the like interpersonality. Yeah. All this. I love it. I love Supernatural for that reason, because it's an entertainment in and of itself.
I love fandom. Swapna, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Time is up for today's session of Pixel Therapy. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope that listening to our thoughts and feelings gave you some thoughts and feelings of your own. If you want more Pixel Therapy, come check us out at patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can snag that monthly bonus episode for just $2 a month, plus opportunities to get involved with the community and influence the show directly. If you're not up for contributing monetarily, but you enjoyed this episode, you can show your support for free by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and following us on Instagram at pixeltherapypod. That stuff is just as important, and we appreciate it just as much. Remember that Pixel Therapy is a happy member of the But Why Though podcast network, so you can support us by supporting them and heading over to butwhythoughpodcast.com. That's though with a THO. Take a peek at the inclusive geek community they're building around pop culture news, reviews, and kick-ass podcasts like yours truly. And you can keep up with all of this stuff and more by visiting our website at pixeltherapypod.com.
Finally, since we like to put our money and our energy where our mouth is, we end every episode with a recommended side quest. Thank you so much to Swapna for the recommendation this week. If you've heard it before, I do believe we covered this side quest in one of our Patreon episodes, but it's always a good time to hear about it again. The organization we're telling you about today is Stop AAPI Hate. In response to the alarming escalation in xenophobia and bigotry resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, the Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council, Chinese for Affirmative Action, and the Asian American Studies Department of San Francisco State University launched the Stop AAPI Hate Coalition on March 19th, 2020. The coalition tracks and responds to incidents of hate, violence, harassment, discrimination, shunning, and child bullying against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the United States. Their website is full of resources as well as a tool that you can use to report instances of hate. So definitely check it out. You can also donate. You can find more information at stopaapihate.org.
Thank you for that side quest, Spencer. That is our show for today. So go forth, run a story mission, level up some stats, and don't forget to hug an NPC every now and then. We'll be back soon with some more
Pixel
Therapy. Bye-bye.